Welcome back to the Change in the Perception of Sales. The podcast is designed to change the way people perceive the sales industry. Sales shouldn't be this dirty word, and together with the help of you and our guests, we're looking to add value and share insights to the sales community and together make sales a career of choice. On today's episode, we are joined by Michaela Wain, Managing Director of Design and Build and BBC Apprentice Finalist. This is one of the most raw and candid episodes we've probably had on the podcast so far, as we run through Michaela's journey from starting in construction sales to then launching her own businesses, why she's on a mission to educate and encourage more women to get into male-dominated industries, such as sales and construction, and why women should be talking more about money. And of course, we talk in depth about her experience as a finalist on the BBC Apprentice. This is not one to be missed. Hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Change in the Perception of Sales podcast. And today I'm delighted to say we are joined by Michaela Wain. Michaela, thank you very much for joining us today.
No problemo. Happy to be here.
It is great to have you. And as always, before we kick things off and go into the conversation, for the listeners and the people tuning in, please just give them a bit of an insight and an introduction into who you are.
I'm a nobody, Kyle. I'm a very
That's not true.
I'm a busy nobody is who I am. A busy fool. I am Michaela Wain. I was on The Apprentice donkeys years ago. I have several businesses in and around the construction industry. The main one is Design and Build UK, which is a marketing agency. But I do the Women in Construction Awards, the Women in Construction Hub, and just lots of things around EDI in construction.
Brilliant. Not a nobody at all. And The Apprentice and lots of businesses we will definitely be touching on later on. The first thing I'm keen to understand is, on the last series, we actually had someone from outside the sales industry that was in the finance world. It was one of our most listened to episodes, actually. But a lot of people might just hear your introduction then. They might look at your LinkedIn background and your experience, and they might go, what's someone with a background in construction doing on a sales podcast? So where were you first introduced to the wonderful world of sales, Michaela?
I've always sold because I grew up really poor. So we just had to sell anything we could to get some money so I could go shop and get sweets. So I was taught sales from about the age of 3. But professionally, I got into sales when I was taking a gap year from university. Gap year. I was doing really random. I was studying religion and special needs because I wanted to be an RE teacher / counsellor to help girls actually. So that kind of came full circle. And in this gap year, I went living with my dad, and he'd funded my lifestyle for about 6 months and was just like, get a job or I'm going to kick you out, which was really annoying. So I ended up being offered the opportunity to work at 2 different places. One was Greg's pasty shop, and I was 19, and a blue hairnet in Bolton Town Centre was a no-go. And the other was a construction magazine selling advertising. And it was a half decent basic for my age, and obviously given that I had no experience. But it was good potential with commission, and I guess that's where I was introduced to it. And I just ended up doing very well early doors and thought, there's no way I'm taking a teacher's wage after this. I'm spending loads of money on passing a degree. So I just ended up stuck in sales from that point. I don't know if you can call it stuck because I've had a really good ride with it, to be fair, but I've ended up doing sales since then.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's very from RE teacher, counsellor to working in construction sales is definitely a bit of a turn. First of all, on Greg's, I've got to ask, what's your normal go-to order at Greg's? Because I know you may be the blue hairnet, but you've still got to love Greg's being from up north.
Yeah, but Kyle, I can't have it anymore because it just gives me the worst heartburn. You see what? I've hit 40 and my life's just ending. So I've not had a pasty for some time now. But historically, it just would have been a traditional meat and potato flaker. Can't go wrong.
Meat and potato, you can't go wrong with that. Steak bake as well is good. But swiftly moving on from Greg's anyway. So started your sales career selling in with the construction industry, magazine space. I always like to ask this question just for the nostalgia of it, really. can you remember your first ever sale and what it felt like at the time?
Yeah, it was a really shit one. I do remember it. I remember it with my business. Well, I remember my first payment from the business actually. And I remember my first sale at this business. It was a £250 order for an eighth of a page that had been discounted from 395. And I was buzzing, but I was like, oh, I've still got like another 3.5 grand to go in. My target at the time was about 4 grand. I was like, what the hell? I'm going to have to make 1,000,000 calls to get there. But I was buzzing because I thought, oh, I've finally done it and started understanding the process. I don't think you ever forget your first sale anywhere. All of the businesses I've been at, like in between as well, I think it's always a clear memory because it's an achievement.
Yeah, I agree. I remember our first ever placement as well. I still bump into him walking around Manchester every now and then, and it just always stays in your mind forever and ever. So that was the first sale then, the eighth of the magazine page. How did your kind of sales career progress then in the few years that you were working in that particular role?
So basically, I did about a year there, and it was quite a large company, this, and there was no chance of progression. And within the first 12 months, the first month was a bit hit and miss. I managed to hit my target because there was like, you're going to get fired. I thought, oh my God, my dad will kick me out. So I just proper grafted and managed to hit my target. And then after maybe 3 months, that was it. I was away. I was doing really well. So by 12 months, I was doing really good, getting good commission, and I knew I was earning this business quite a lot of money, but I wanted to get promoted to team leader and eventually sales manager. I was always quite ambitious, and there were just miles too many people who had been there before me who was doing well as well. So they was going to get promoted first. So I'd heard about a startup business. In fact, I must have been 20 when I started working there because I turned 21 there, and then I heard about this startup business doing the same thing and in Bolton as well. So I went over there because I thought there's going to be a faster route to sales manager or wherever I wanted to be. I didn't have a formal plan, so I ended up going working at this business. I left there and went to this other business, and yeah, I guess that was the aim. When I went there, they was doing really quite poor. Really, they was doing about 6 grand a month sales, and by the time I'd left, they was doing about 100 grand sales because of the different things that I basically brought over from this other business. I was like, oh, we need to upsell, we need to cross sell, we need to sell to all customers. None of these things they was doing, just basic like one-on-one of sales. And I helped them to recruit as well, but mainly being like my friends and family, people who was at this other business. Got all my friends and family in there so we could have a good time as well. Yeah, they ended up doing really well, and I guess that's where I started taking things really seriously. Then I bought my first house when I was 22. I was earning good money. My partner at the time was a plumber. It was like the recession hit, so he ended up in and out of work all the time. So I was the stable earner. So it added more pressure, but it also made me a far better salesperson because I knew I had these bills to cover and all the rest of it. And I guess that's when I started taking a career in sales very seriously from that point.
Brilliant. I think that's the real side of it, because we'll come on to this now, because the whole point of this podcast is to change the perception of sales, because people still look down on it or see it negatively. But the fact you were able to get on the property ladder at the age of 22 as a result of your hard work in sales is like a real success story of why more people should get into it. For you, it sounds like the journey wasn't necessarily sales was the dream. It was just better than Greg's at the time. But what was your thoughts as an outsider looking in, or your perception of the sales industry before you got offered that particular role?
To be honest, I never would have thought that sales was bad. I always knew that that's an area where you could earn money. So when I was younger, I'm one of 5 children with my mum, and she was just like working all kinds of jobs when we was growing up, like a security guard, and she did just the most random shit. Oh, there's this first word. I'll count them. Yeah, just
I think it's the second,
oh,
actually.
it's another one snuck in. Apologies to everybody. I've got a potty mouth. That's why I'm good at sales, though. Swear more. That's my first tip. Swear more. You'll be great at sales. So yeah, and then when my younger brother and sister was born, so I was 12 when the youngest one of us was born, and she went looking at a different career, and she ended up being an estate agent, which is obviously all sales, and she did really well. So I looked at her from being like a security guard and just having all these random jobs to then being an estate agent, doing sales and earning really good money. So to me, sales was always going to be an option. And to earn the kind of money that my mum was earning, I would have to be like a head mistress to earn that kind of money if I really wanted to be a teacher. So I always knew it was good money, and I was really money motivated. I think over the years of interviewing people, you have so many people who say they're money motivated and they like their idea of it, but actually when it comes down to it, it isn't that important to them. For me, it was always really important. I knew that sales had always earned me the money. So my perception was a positive one, and that didn't change throughout my career. It's still, I tell everybody, I'm like, if you want to earn good money and you just don't have an education, so just learn to sell and sell, and you will always have good money.
Good. It is a great skill to have, and we find that interesting. People that have got maybe a role model or someone in their family or life that has done a sales-based role doesn't have the negative perception. Anyone else that doesn't tend to think that greatly of it as a career. Quite interesting with your background, then, obviously starting in sales and doing well to the point where you set up your own business. But where you've been in sales is a male-dominated industry. Construction is also an incredibly male-dominated industry. What was that like for you in the years when you first started?
It was an absolute breeze, Kyle, as you'd imagine. um, well, so some background. I've got two older brothers. One's 5 years older than me, one's 3 years older than me, and they used to beat the life out of me growing up. And I used to play on the boys' football team. I guess I would have been classed as a tomboy. So being in and around being around men, not in them, being around men, I was really familiar with it, and I was never treated differently. My mum didn't wrap me up in cotton wool. She would just leave me to get beat up off my brothers, and she was very much like, you have to have bigger balls than any man in this world to be able to succeed. That was like something that she drummed into me from being like 12 years old. Obviously, I didn't have a clue what she was talking about. That makes perfect sense now. So she brought me up to be very tough. So I never saw any real inequalities. I just judged people as individuals, and the ones who was looking back discriminating, however you say that word. I just thought that individual was an idiot and didn't connect to the two really. It was only when I've looked back in hindsight, reflected them, and that is the situation. So I guess I was very naive when I started in sales, and to be honest, most of the people I was selling to, you were just a woman selling to them, and I actually think it had its advantages because I was selling 95% of the time to men, and there's still, like men, a lot of men just still want to be nice to women, they feel sorry for you or whatever. So I just used it to my advantage and played on it and was like super girly on form. So I think it actually had a lot of pros for me and worked in my favour as well. It was only, you just get a few, like, listen to me, young lady. And I'm like, oh God, I'm young and I'm a lady now, am I? In just a few things like this, nothing major, didn't bother me. The main thing, I guess, upon reflection, that was the worst was, as I said, worked at this business, and it was me who had turned this company around and made it into what it was. There was advertising for a sales manager, and everybody in the company was like, obviously Michaela's going to get it. I pretty much recruited everybody who was there and then trained them all as well. And also I was just proper sick at my job. So it was obvious I'm gonna be the sales manager. And so I said to them like, oh, how can I apply for it? And it was like, oh, need not apply. Because actually we're looking for an older man. And I was like, what? What kind of mystical nonsense waffle B word is this? And I think at the time, I don't think they realised they was discriminating. I genuinely think there was only like young lads themselves at the time. I was only 24, 25. They was maybe late 20s, early 30s. I think they just thought a sales manager is an old man who has got like sales management experience or whatever, and they've not thought about the repercussions of bringing somebody from the outside into what was a very close-knit sales team, and what, they just not thought it through at all. And so I was absolutely fuming, like livid. I've been there for 4 years and done all this for them. They both driving. They was driving like Ford Escorts, and by the time I left, they both had a Porsche 911. I'm like, they're absolutely taking the mick out of me big time. So then I was like, well, why don't you give me an office in Manchester? You know, I'll go somewhere else. I'll set up an office there for you. Like, let's, and it was just, everything was a no-go. I think they just wanted to keep me in sales because I was very good. And I just, that wasn't my career. I didn't want to do that forever. I wanted to move, you know, I wanted to make moves. So, anyway, I got pregnant, which was a blessing. I love my son, but I was kind of stuck because I was pregnant. So I decided to stay, and lo and behold, they employed the lovely Nigel, who honestly was probably a really nice chap. But I was just mad. I was fuming. I'm just looking at Nigel like, you've got my job. And then he started coming in like, oh, you know, you can pick a prize from the pot. And it was like a Freddo. I'm like, this is seriously, this is the sales manager. This is what he's bringing to the table. Freddos, literally Freddos, like, no. And to rub salt in the wound, they was like, can you train him? They asked me to train him because he'd never done magazine sales before. I was just like, I did it because I was pregnant and I was, you know, I was just like, I'll just crack on with things. But then after my son was born, I had to go back to work when he was about 2 weeks old because his dad was in and out of work all the time. And again, I was earning more money. So I had to go back to work, and I was working long hours and things were going well, but I was going home to my son and I was just like, I loved him so much. I was looking at him like, I can't keep spending all this time away. Like, I wanted to have children and have like some financial freedom, but also time freedom where possible. And it wasn't possible. And they really did get my back up with Nigel. So when he was 4 or 5 months old, I was sat in work one day. And this was like, I'm not encouraging people to do this, but it worked out well for me. My brother worked for us on the editorial team, and we just sat there. I went, I'm leaving. Literally, on my lunch hour, I must have just got really mad. Hormonal or something. I went, I'm leaving. He was like, well, I was like, Lee John. He's 5 years older than me as well, but he does as he's told. I was like, I'm leaving. So are you coming now? And he was like, well, where are you going to go? I was like, I'm going to start my own business. He went, hey. I was like, I don't know, Lee John, but I can sell. You can write articles. I'm leaving. I ain't spending another day in this office. I was like, so are you coming or not? And he was like, oh, well, I don't know. And I was like, I'll give you 20% of the business. Are you coming or not? He was like, yeah, come on, the thoughts to it. So we just spent an afternoon our notice. And at the time, I was on like 70 grand a year, up to 90 as well. I was earning decent money. I just like threw it all in the wind and was like, right, I've had enough. And yeah, we handed in our notice. And the next day, we started trading. So to anybody who's listening, if a woman comes and asks for a promotion, give it on, because now I am like 10x in what they're doing. So it was a huge mistake on their part to not just give me the promotion.
Wow, what a story and a journey as well. Freddo is worth quite a lot now, actually. They've gone up a lot in price in recent years. That's like the barometer of inflation, isn't it? How much a Freddo is.
Exactly.
But yeah, well, you don't want to be winning that in a sales role, though.
Freddo.
Freddo. They are nicer. Caramel ones, I don't think they do them anymore. But anyway, away from Freddo's then, coming on to, I guess, that experience. And at the beginning of what you were mentioning there is, it sounds like you were kind of well conditioned with your brothers, I guess your family background, what you'd been brought up with. But there'll be a lot of people listening to this that might be selling to a male dominated space or working in a male dominated environment. They maybe haven't had the conditioning beforehand that you had had. And what advice would you maybe give to them if they're in a role, maybe just feeling a bit uncomfortable with, being in a male dominated environment? What advice would you give to them?
I think you need to use your femininity as an advantage. Like, we all have to acknowledge that men and women are different. I know people, like talk about equality and all that, but we're just not the same. So like, let's not mix all that up into one before. We're very different, and you have to use your differences to your advantage. So that would be 101. Definitely use it to your advantage. And I'm not saying like flirt with everybody. What I'm saying is be a woman in that environment, because then you're different and you stand out. So if every day they're being sold to by other men, and then you come along and you're so different because you're a woman and you talk different and you look different and you drink champagne and get your nails done or whatever it is, then there's differences, and people more often than not are intrigued by the differences. So I would embrace that, number one. And number two, just do not take any nonsense from you. Appreciate that one, Karen?
Yeah, as a no, thanks for that.
Don't take any nonsense from anybody, and call things out. I think it can feel intimidating when you look different to everybody else in a room, or you speak different, or your attitude's different. But again, if you embrace that, you'll find confidence in it. And if somebody is just a bit of an arse, then call a spade as well. We do have to, again, because of the upbringing I had, I've always learned to stick up for myself. And I think a lot of women who are in construction, in sales, in business, they're not perhaps as tough as me in that. I do understand that, but you just have to be in life in general. Not everybody is nice. It's not all flowers and roses and fairies and cakes. Like you do have to have a bit of something about you. Call it out. And I think the key thing is to have the focus, to have the end goal. I am a huge goal setter, and once you understand your path to this goal, nothing much will get in your way. So even if it is people who are relatively rude, and people are just people. There's nothing stranger than folk. We have to accept that, and it doesn't mean just because you're a woman they're being rude to you. They're probably rude to all the men as well. Like people are just weird at times. So you've got to learn to just let it be water off a duck's back and not let it hinder whatever this goal is that you've set for yourself. You've got to be so focused on the thing, and whether that's your monthly target, your annual one, buying a house, going on a holiday, buying a car, whatever that goal is, it's got to be so tight in your mind that when you come across the adversities that inevitably everybody faces, men and women, it just isn't going to do anything to you because you have got you've got the goal, you know what you're trying to do.
Great advice, Michaela. You're right. The people can be weird out there as well. But I think that's really good advice for people that are in the role. To be fair, because I think a lot of people might feel like that, and they might not be as naturally tough as you. But I think being able to deal with it, and also having that laser sharp focus on the reason why you're doing it, will probably help with your want to be able to deal with those situations. Coming on to obviously, I guess the discrimination that did happen, call a spade, like you said, it was discriminatory what happened to you. It sounds like you were by far and away the most qualified person for the role, but unfortunately they went with someone else based on the stereotypical person that they perceived would usually occupy that position, which is fundamentally wrong. It sounds like early on in your career, you didn't really see like the inequality too much because again it was kind of what you were used to. But if I even look at what's behind you, there's female awards, obviously doing a lot for women in construction, women in business. How did that experience shape what you've kind of gone on to do since then?
So again, I didn't realize what it was at all at the time, and things only changed for me at the point of the Apprentice. So even in business, and there's been, to be honest, when I look back, there's just been tons of it. But it never bothered me. Again, I'm just very focused on this is what I'm doing. And so you meet these people along the way, and majority men, but I'm working majority with men. I just bat it off and then carry on the path what I'm on. And it's only upon reflection that I've really realised it. But it was from appearing on The Apprentice. And again, when I was on The Apprentice, I was just like a business owner and I worked in construction. But everybody started telling me, oh, you're a woman in business, you're a woman in construction. And I'll be honest, it bothered me at the time. I didn't like the label. And I was like, why do you keep saying this? Because you're a man in business then. Like, what does this mean? And it used to...
You wouldn't say that, would you? You wouldn't say to everyone you're a man in business.
Yeah, I
It'd be
find it
weird.
really like bizarre. And I know a lot of women who were still in this place where I was at that time as well. And, just keep pointing it out. But what happened... But people think The Apprentice is live. So once I'd got fired, again, massive mistake by Lord Sugar, he'll be getting told. I like proving people wrong. After I'd got fired, I had thousands upon thousands of messages, and I mean like over 10,000, where it was mainly people saying like, oh, congratulations, well done. Loads of people saying thanks for representing women in construction, other women in construction. And I was like, I just found it all really weird because I wasn't part of that world at that time. And I was like, right, yeah, this is interesting. And then I had a lot on top of that, mixed in with all this. I must have had over 100 women either approach me, inbox me, call me, telling me or asking me for advice on what would you do in this situation? They've been discriminated against. What would you do in this situation? And I was like, wow, this is nuts. Like all of this is going on. And that's what made me start thinking. I was like, oh my God, it's happened to me. And then it dawned on me and I was like, the actual B words have done that to me as well. And I never knew. It's like it just snuck in there, this discrimination. And that's when I started realizing, actually, this is an important label to have, and this is a really great community to try and help. And going back to my days of wanting to be an RE teacher / counsellor, I'd always wanted to help women anyway. From adversities that I'd faced in my childhood, I always wanted to give something back or help somebody like an RE teacher had helped me, basically. So I had that passion anyway, so it kind of did align with, I guess, who I was as a person. But with mixed in again with all of these, there was 2 women, 2 different incidents were trigger warning as well with this one, where they've actually been raped whilst they was at work, or within the work environment. One was on a work night out, and one actually was in work. And both of them ended up getting the person's charged, but obviously they left the industry, and I still speak to her. She's never worked since. And obviously it's absolutely life destroying. And I just thought, at the time I was offered the opportunity, again, like the Greg's one, it wasn't much of an opportunity to go on a Celebrity Big Brother, but I never went on to The Apprentice to be like a celebrity. I did it for career progression. So I thought I can go on Big Brother because it was decent money, but I might destroy my career because I'm lively when I drink and they give you alcohol. I thought I might end up looking like a right plum. Or I can use this platform that I've got now to try and do something with women in construction. I had no real end goal or knowing what I was going to do, but how can I use what I've already got to try and help these women, which is where, I guess the focus of that came about, and really understanding and reflecting and looking back at my career, what had happened throughout that time, and how can I help other women to never have to face this again, or to help them if they are going through it as well. So that's when it all happened, that the women in construction, women in business stuff, I guess, developed from there. That was nearly 7 years ago.
Wow.
Long story. I can talk, can I, Kyle? I bet you're like, this is
You can indeed. It's good. Hey, it makes great podcast listening, though. It really does. No, I think that was powerful, actually, because I think we'll come on to The Apprentice shortly. There's obviously the more jovial, humorous side, but actually, if you look at the real life impact of your appearance on the show that had on so many people and has influenced what you're doing now, I think it is quite powerful, in fairness. And one of the things I was interested to know, and we'll come on to this later with one of the interviews in The Apprentice, but it's no secret you have fingers in a lot of pies. You do a lot, a lot of businesses, a lot of, a lot of appearances, and then all of the amazing stuff you're doing for women in construction, etc. Like, why do you do all of these things? Because let's be honest, you could probably have a much easier life by not doing a lot of these things. I'm just interested to tap into what is the motivation behind everything that you're doing.
I don't want to be poor, Kyle. I have a real fear of when I grew up. We didn't have much money. It was a great upbringing, by the way. But we had free school dinners, free school uniforms. We was very poor, and we just didn't have much. I went on one holiday when I was until I started working. We went caravan and stuff, but I mean one proper holiday. We only ever went on one, and there was 5 of us in a 3-bed semi, and my parents, so there was 7 of us in a 3-bed semi with 2 dogs and budgies and all kinds. Yeah, it was the absolute mayhem childhood. But the embarrassment of queuing up and getting a ticket, and then all your mates being like, you get free school dinners. And I guess it just built something in me where I was like, I can never do that again. And then obviously, when you start your own business, all you ever want to do is be going forward. And if I see an opportunity and I think it's a good one, I'm going to go for it. I'm that person. I'm overconfident. I think I can do everything. I don't know what goes through my head half the time. And mainly what I've done is invest in people. So because design and build did well, I had some spare cash or whatever. So then I invested in somebody who I knew who was starting a utilities business. I was like, we'll give you some money, come in the offices, we'll market the business. And generally that's what we do, or what I do. I'll invest X amount of cash, we'll give them the office space, and I'll teach them how to run a business, and then leave them to do their own thing. And I don't really have to do much from that point other than the marketing, which the business does. So it sounds like I'm doing loads and these are all my businesses, but actually there's other managing directors of these companies that do it, and I'm just really an investor in it. But you strike up a good deal when you first do it. To be fair, I've started to offload things. I've exited a lot of the businesses. At this point, I've just got design and build, the women in construction, and because I'm going to do something else. I can't tell you yet. But that's all at the end of this year. So I'm trying to get rid of everything so that my brain can focus on this one, like the big step, the end goal. So yeah, it isn't that I'm spreading myself too thin, which potentially at times I am, is that I invest in people. So that's what all that's about, Kyle. Let's clear it up. I'm not like Wonder Woman. I'm not just about selling for like a million businesses.
I'm sure you probably were at the beginning, but yeah, it makes sense. You've got people that are there looking after and kind of doing the day-to-day running. Kind of last one on, I guess, your career and what you're doing now, and then we'll touch on uh, the Apprentice and that experience. The stuff that you're doing for women in construction, obviously, again, we can literally see the awards and some of the images from that behind you. What, in your opinion, then, based on your experience, do we need to be doing to be getting more women into sales and construction, obviously? But what do we need to be doing, in your opinion, to get more women into these industries?
Tell them, well, like just literally tell people about it, create role models, platform people. That's what we're doing. So the visibility, and I know it's a real cliche, but it's true. You can only be what you see. If my mum maybe wasn't an estate agent, I never would have thought, oh, sales is for me. I might be looking at Greg, so who knows? I think it's important to create role models and to platform them role models. If there's an underrepresented demographic to literally show them on TikTok and Instagram, our social media is a great platform now for it. And then explaining the route into this as well. So speaking to people from a young age, we started an initiative with brownies and girl guides where, like, stop teaching me how to sew a button. I've never sewn a button in my life, Kyle. I'm not interested in sewing buttons. Like, show me like about construction. So they have a little construction badge now. And just these little things to understand its options. Let's stop having Bob the builder and start having Bernadette the builder. And, like, stop stereotyping from a young age. And I'm not saying in construction it's ever going to be 50-50 because it's tough. And naturally, our hormones and inherently, and just society in itself, women don't generally want to work in these tough environments in general. And I don't like to generalize, but I will do for the sake of this podcast. Women are more nurturing. It's our hormones were different. I keep saying that we are different. So they're more likely to go into nursing than they are into bricklaying. However, if not all women are like that, and if you do not know that in bricklaying, you're going to get paid 4 times more money than being a hairdresser, then it's never going to be an option for you. But if this is pointed out, and I go into schools and tell the girls this, I'm like, if it's pointed out, like, your time is worth something. Your time is worth something, and you decide what that is worth. Do you want to get paid £12.50 an hour to do somebody's hair, which I get my hair done, there's a need for it, or do you want to get paid whatever it is, £50 an hour? And they're on good money, may I add, as well. Insecure jobs, labour's going nowhere, it's not being taken over by AI. Do you want to go and earn this money instead? And yes, it's more difficult. But if ever you are left in a position where you are the main care provider for your children, for your parents, for your siblings, whoever it is, you need to have money. You've got to have money. Let's start talking to women about money. Let's not pretend it's like some dirty thing. Like, you have to be secure in yourself. You never know what's going to happen in your relationship. Let's stop only focusing on men setting up and providing for the family, and start teaching women how to provide for the family as well. And on top of that, like, consider men's mental health. Like, it takes 2 people now to run a household, and you can't just have all of that pressure on a man to be able to provide for everybody. It's just not the reality of the world anymore. So everybody will benefit from it. In addition to that, there's the biggest skills gaps shortage that we've had since World War II. Brexit hammered us, the pandemic hammered us, the money is amazing, and there's a huge need to get people into construction. And you don't just have to be a bricklayer, you can be a quantity surveyor, a project manager, a business owner. There's so many different things that you can do in and around construction, but people don't know about it. They're not being taught it at schools. So it's at every single level that it needs changing. You need to create role models, you need to point out transferable skills from one industry to another, and you need to be talking to the next generation as well, so that they know that this is actually a valid option for them. And the same goes with sales. I mean, I can talk about construction because I do it all the time, but the same goes with sales as well. You have to have these people who are doing well at sales. Create a role model, have somebody within your team, look at people with transferable skills, and talk to the next generation. And that's how you're going to attract more women into any industry where there's a lack thereof.
Love it. So role models, absolutely key, and I think education as well is what you mentioned there. It's construction and sales probably both similar. There still isn't sales; you just don't get taught it anywhere. If you're in the US, you get it at university, but in the UK, it just doesn't really exist. Just like construction. So I think there's some really, really good points on what we can kind of actively be doing really to work on that. Um, Moving forward now, then from I guess your career onto a big moment in your life, which was appearing on the BBC Apprentice, being a finalist, doing very well. I remember watching that series actually. What was the reason, first of all, for you even going on the show in the first place?
Well, I'd never watched it, so I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I must have like watched it in passing or something because I knew like they did tasks and that, so it must have been on the TV or something. But I weren't like a watcher of The Apprentice, so I didn't know the shitstorm that was going to happen. Basically, oh, excuse me, there's another one.
Number three.
I didn't know what was going to happen after this, during it, or any of the rest of it, or what to expect. So my situation at the time was my two main businesses. We was doing about £4 million turnover a year. And I know like turnovers, whatever, vanity and profits is side, but I was doing well as well. We was earning profit. Like I did not need to go on The Apprentice. I was just sweet. But what had happened was I felt really stagnant in my career. So we'd done like 3.3 million, 3.5 million, 3.7, and we'd had this massive growth spell, and then we were just hovering around 4 million, and we couldn't break it, and we couldn't scale, and it was really annoying me, and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I took all my initial business advice off a butcher who was like 80 years old, who honestly, he was like, use a pay and in book. I had a purchase ledger in that when I first started off, just mad times, because obviously you didn't know what zero was or anything like that. So I didn't really have anybody to turn to for business advice, and I suffered with crippling, and I mean crippling, social anxiety. So I was never going to go networking. I was never, just the thought of seeing people, and I was hugely judgmental and incorrectly as well, where I just felt like I'm going to go there and everybody's going to be like stiffs, and they're all going to judge me, and I'm not going to like them because obviously I'm common as muck. So I just felt uncomfortable in them environments, never would have done it. My brother had been on Love Island, I think the year before, about 18 months before, and he had a whale of a time, obviously, because he'd been on Love Island. And I was like, oh, do you know what? It's going to be loads of fun. I'm always up for new experiences. I might be able to learn how to finally break this barrier that we're stuck at. And we'll just see what happens. And I said to my mum, like, oh, imagine if I do 4 weeks on telly. I think that was like the goal. I was thinking I was going to get fired somewhere in and around 4 weeks. And I thought the interview process leading up to getting onto the show, like that interview process, is so difficult that I thought I'm going to be pushing myself out of my comfort zone all the time. I'm going to be in an environment I don't want to be in all of the time. And the anxiety that I had at one point before I'd started my business, I didn't actually leave my house for like 6 months because it just took over my life. I went, whatever, I just went mad. So I never wanted to get that back again after I had my son. It'd come in waves, this anxiety, where I'd be like, oh, a bit nervous about going far away places and stuff. And having my son had really helped it never come back that bad. But I could feel myself having these waves, and I thought it'd be so lovely to just get rid of all of that. And surely, if I put myself in this environment, like, you're just creating more armor for yourself that you can then draw on in future. Like, nothing can be as worse as being fired like in front of 9 million people by Lord Sugar, like, and you've always got that. Then if you ever be like, oh, I'm going to go to a networking event, like, just remember 9 million people saw you get fired from Michaela, like, you're going to be sweet. So it was joint motivation. I did want like some mentoring and to understand where I was going wrong, but I also wanted to try and cure this, this separate thing I had going on. So long way of saying that was my motivation.
And thanks for sharing. I think there's vulnerability can be a good thing. People see you, being on The Apprentice, finalist, successful business owner, doing great in your sales career, but actually it's not always amazing in business, in life in general. So I think it's really interesting and good to share that side. And with the kind of social anxiety, well, crippling as you described it, that you were suffering, if people were to write a list of things they would do to maybe remedy that, I should imagine that going on The Apprentice in front of 9 million people would probably be somewhere near the bottom of that list, if not the bottom. Why was it at the top for you?
Because I'm an idiot. And do you know what? It's just as I was saying about you can only be what you can see. So my brother's 10 years younger than me. And when he went on that, I guess it just made it possible. Like, well, if Josh can do it, I can do it. It just, it's just one of those things. And that is why it's so important to have role models, because you look at that person, you think, yo, you're no different to me. In fact, I think you're thick as two sharp planks. So if he can do it, like, I absolutely can do this. So it was really because I guess my younger brother, I felt inspired that he'd done that. And I thought, this could be good. And it's a business show. I was never going to go on Love Island. Like, my boyfriend don't want to see me in a bikini, so there's no way I was going to do that. And The Apprentice was a business show, so I just, I don't know what I would think. To be honest, Carl, God knows. It must only be that. All I can think is I had a moment of madness sent in the thingy, and then it just, it spiraled from there.
Right, it's worked out all right in the end. But I think that's a good point on role model as well, because I think people always presume they have to be really senior or much older than you, and obviously that's proven that they don't. They just need to be people that have maybe done something that you look up to or done something that you want to do in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be age or seniority.
No, I think the best role model as well is like your competitors. When if I look at my competitors and they're making moves, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to do that now. Like, I've got to do it. I'm going to have to do it better. So I think it's really, that's what drives me. What drives me is people saying I can't do something, or other people doing it who have like less ability, really. I'm talking about my competitors, not my brother. Although, and I think, oh well, if they can do it, I can do it. If they're doing that, we should look at this. And I'm not saying, oh, you copy everything they're doing, but you definitely draw inspiration from that. There's a lot to be said about other people who you would think you are doing better than, then going on to inspire you to do something else and keeping you pushing forward. It absolutely does not have to be some old person sat in a C-suite somewhere.
Yeah, love it. And on the show, obviously, did really well. Got all the way to the final. What did you really learn about yourself throughout that process and time on The Apprentice?
My accent is really strong. That was the main thing. People kept messaging me saying she needs subtitles. It's softened now over the last 7 years because my boyfriend, I met him on The Apprentice actually, and he's a southerner, and just nobody understood me. I was going out down south with him, and they was all like, "What did she say?" I was and he was having to translate, so I had to sort my accent out. That was the main the main lesson, but obviously it's still very broad. But I think more than anything, the biggest thing I took from it was the confidence in my own abilities. When I went on, I was so scared. Oh, Kyle, honestly, I can't even tell you. Like, I was absolutely shitting my pants. And I know I'm swearing again, but that is like the reality of the situation. I was sweating. Like, honestly, the back of my knees was sweating. I was like, you can't even sweat there. There's no glands. Like, what is happening to me? And I stood in that boardroom, like, wet through more than if I'd been on a 10K. I was just like, and Lord Sugar spoke to me. I was just like, It was, oh God, it was just the worst. And for the first 3 or 4 boardrooms, I barely spoke. And I mean, like, if you look back at the edit, they did an amazing job, because I think the first boardroom, I said one thing: I'm from Bolton, I just want more. And they put it in. That's literally all I said. But they had to put it in because they had to build a story. So I was so scared. But over the course of being there, I really got more confident. I started realizing, like, oh, you're a solicitor, but you're actually terrible at business. And I started to feel better about my own abilities, and being like, oh, actually, I'm doing really well in business. I'm seeing other people who was great and, like, really good potential. But I'm like, oh, you've had your business for the same amount of time as me, and you're doing 500,000, I'm doing 4 million. Like, and to look at us both, you'd be like, she speaks better. I'm talking about, she's still my friend as well, so like, she speaks better. She just comes across like a better businesswoman. But actually, in the same amount of time, I grew mine to 8 times bigger than where Sarah's was. That she is amazing, by the way, so I'm not dogging her out. But that gave me confidence then. I was like, oh, I don't have to compare myself in a negative manner to these other people who just, like, speak a bit better than me and don't slump and slouch and stuff and aren't like common as milk. And look, man, I'm just wearing a t-shirt and leggings to work. Like, it's not all about that. It's about what's in your brain over all of the other things. And I guess that's what I learned, actually. Like, and also I should have won. I learned that. Lord Sugar makes mistakes as well.
He does indeed. There's nothing wrong with a northern accent, by the way, as well. I don't think I needed subtitles. I'm from Bury, not too far from Bolton, so I think I could understand it very, very easily. Maybe for others though, but nothing wrong with a northern accent. Um, the one bit I really remember from that show, and we talked about this earlier, was really funny in the interviews where I think it was the interview with Mike, and he was just listing off all of
Mm.
the businesses that you were listed as a director in, where he had a case file for every single one, and he just kept towering them
Mm.
up to the point where I don't think you two could even see each other anymore, which really made me laugh at the time. What was the interview experience? I mean, what was that experience like, that one specifically, but what was the whole interview experience like in general?
So number one, that was for visual effects, and yes,
Yeah.
and again, like these are businesses. Because I said to him, I was like, "Are these my businesses now?" Because I was like, "What even is that business?" And these are just businesses where I've been like, my son's dad, who was saying he was a plumber, he was in network. So I said, "Oh, we'll set up a business together." So I was on his business. I wasn't doing the business. Anyway, he didn't even end up doing it, but it was just stuff like that, or I'd like invested in somebody and then it's not panned out. I was like, "Well, this is ridiculous." And imagine how many businesses Lord Sugar's got. Really, they should be like, "Oh, you're capable of doing this as well. This shouldn't be a hindrance. This is a bonus, Kyle." Which is what I told Mike as well. "Do you think you're overstretched?" I'm like, "No, Mike, do you think you're overstretched? Don't come at me, Mike. Do not come at me." What I will say is the interviews was my most confident time because on The Apprentice, one of the tasks, for instance, was picking up dog poo. Now, I don't want to sound like an arsehole here, but I'm going to do. I used to have 3 dogs when I went into The Apprentice. One died when I was in there. I used to have 3 dogs when I went into The Apprentice, and I did have a housekeeper. And I know that makes me sound like an arb, but I did because I was a single mum and I had quite a bit of money and I didn't want to clean my own house. So that's what I did. And she used to do my shopping and make me tea and that. It was good times then. She used to also sort the dogs out. So I was on the apprentice task and it's like, "Go and pick up dog poo." I'm like, "Absolutely not." Because in the real world, I don't do it for my own dogs. So on this task, I will direct. There is no way I'm going doing that. And that was the only thing that I really refused to do because I'm like, "This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It's not about business. It just isn't about business. I will tell you how to market your dog pooper scooping business, but I ain't going picking it up. I'm not a labourer. Nope." And on all of these tasks, you struggle to a point because my experience is sales and marketing. I have a marketing agency and I sell for that agency. So you put me in a task that's about sales and marketing, I smashed it every single time. Not a problem. That's my experience. You want me to go and pick up dog poo? No. So when it comes to the interviews, I found it much easier because I'm like, this is my business plan. It was an unbelievable business plan because I paid a lot of money to an accountant to write it for me. So it was watertight and they had nothing to go at. And it was a good business. It was a good business idea. I was very confident in it. I knew it inside and out. I was like, I was absolutely fine. So in the interviews, other people was coming out crying and stuff. And I'm like, this is the best that I felt in all the process. Talking to me about something I completely understand inside out. Say what you want to say. I am ready to defend this. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the interview process. I enjoyed talking finally about construction. It was a construction tech business, about all of that I knew about. It was no problem. The only one was Claudine because she started going on about my upbringing and all that, and then she just like she tries to make you cry, I think, and I'm like I'm just not about that life at all. Like the emotions aren't coming into my business. The only emotion I've got is when am I getting paid for selling X, Y, and Z? That's my extent of my emotions. And in the boardroom, it got edited out, but in the boardroom, they pulled me on this, like saying, "Claudine said you was like quite emotionless," and I was like, "Well, it's a business show, so I just didn't feel the need to talk about my mum and my brothers. What has that got to do with my business plan, which is a very good business plan?" And Karen actually said, she was like, "You're right, Michaela, I would have done the same thing." I'm like, "No problem, thank you." So that was
Yeah.
the only one that I found a bit tricky, but the rest of it, yeah, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Send me back in there, Kyle. I'm ready for it.
Really?
I am ready for it.
Claude's an easy interviewer.
Claude was sweet, and you see what? Claude's my good friend now. Me and Claude are best mates. He's the nicest man on the planet. And he thought I was so funny because of my accent. So halfway through our interview, he was just laughing. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? Stop being tight on there. But he said, he was like the only thing that Claude had was you don't need Lord Sugar's investment because, you know, of what I was already doing. And I was like, well, this is stupid. A lot of people don't need the actual money. There's more to it than that. I wanted the mentorship. And he was just like, yeah, the business was good. It stood up. It wasn't unrealistic. It was going to do what it was going to do. So there wasn't much that Clark could say. No, I found yeah, he's a big teddy bear. I hope he hears this.
Claude, well, I might have to send it him. I have no relationship with Claude Mitchell whatsoever, but I'll be sending him just a cold email with a link to this podcast. Hope he can listen to that at the end. We're coming to the end, Michaela. A couple more bits, just quickly, I'm keen to touch on. You mentioned that Lord Sugar gets it wrong, and you wanted to prove him wrong as well. How much did you getting fired at the final fuel your motivation to go on, you know, to do what you've done since in the last 7 years?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I did actually launch the business. I got investment from somebody else and a far better deal as well. Anybody going on the Apprentice, bear that in mind. So I did launch that business. May I add as well, just so you know the kind of woman that I am. My second son, was born 6 weeks premature. And at my launch event for the business off the back of The Apprentice, I was actually in labour and I got through the launch event and then I had my son. So yeah, I'm an absolute machine, Kyle. May add that.
Wow.
It did really well. I got these separate investors, all going well. The pandemic hit. I ended up closing the business down a year ago because during the pandemic, we just got to break even before the pandemic, which is a big thing when it's a tech business. It's huge actually. We just got to just above break even, and the pandemic hit. We lost 90% of our subscribers, so it just killed us off. And we did try to muddle through for a couple of years afterwards, but in the end, it was just going to take too much money and too much time, and I had this other stuff going on, so we decided to close that down. So, you know, what was your question? Or did it fuel it? I guess it did fuel that, and I wanted it to do well. I was really the ego side of me was really bruised when I had to close that business down, but it was literally the pandemic. It wasn't for want of trying. And really, other than that, it wasn't like I've been so inspired to prove him wrong. It was the rest of it comes from a place of goodness. Really, it was that I've been inspired by other women who I want to help, and I really can't cope with these stories of what I'm hearing about women. It really triggers me and makes me very angry. So it's come more of a place not from Lord Sugar, but from hearing their stories. And may I add as well, Lord Sugar's been really lovely. He sent us some video messages for our events. He has given me guidance and does stay in touch like after the fact as well. So I've nothing against him. It's a joke when I say, although I do think he did make a mistake. I told him that as well. I was like, I think you made a mistake. And I emailed him like, oh, can I help you out with your business today? And he was like, how do you think you can help me, Michaela? I was like, how can I help Michaela? What's my next move here?
Well, yeah, that was going to be our next question, actually, just in general. What is next for you, Michaela? You alluded to, I think, a couple of things in the pipeline, but what is next for you?
No more children. I've got two. They drive me up the wall and they're really hard work and they cost a load of money. So anybody thinking about having kids, please know that I spend thousands of pounds a month on education, clothes and holidays. Don't do it. So that's done and dusted, the parenthood. So I've still got to continue being a parent to the two that I've got. And I guess we do. I have something launching at the end of this year. We're going to announce it at the Women in Construction Awards around EDI in construction. It's always been the bigger play. It's been the plan for the last 4 years, and we're just about getting to that point now. I needed to create something that's actually going to impact the industry in a bigger way than just what we're doing. So we're doubling down on that, changing the face of the construction industry, and making a real difference. My son's dad actually took his own life at Christmas. My oldest son, the one who I've referred to a few times in this podcast, and he was in construction. He had his own heating company, a micro business, and whilst large tier one contractors are doing amazing work for mental health in construction, we've got the worst suicide rates and the worst mental health rates in all industries. I've always said that having more women in this environment will help that, because women will ask more than once if somebody is all right, and they'll just naturally notice these subtle signs that somebody isn't. So that's always been a part of it, of what we, like the sales pitch of why to get more women in the industry. But since this has happened, obviously my life has been turned upside down, and I'm completely shattered on my son's behalf for what he's having to experience, and it's made me more driven to, again, I think you find in life you experience painful things and you try and turn that into something positive and something you can give back. So it's making me more driven to try and help with what's happening to predominantly men in construction, of why is this industry so bad and what is the solution to it. So the thing that I'm launching in September, which I'll not say because we're not ready to yet, is going to encompass all of that. It's going to encompass gender equality, like Black people in construction, mental health, disabilities in construction. It's all encompassing, and I'm hoping to actually make a real impact and to force a change, because tier ones are doing fabulous because they've got millions upon millions of pounds to spend on mental health, but micro businesses like my son's dad has no support and nowhere to go. They don't know where to go, but he's working on tier one sites every day. So there needs to be something implemented on them sites to help the framework, the subcontractors, the suppliers, because those are the ones who are suffering. And there's all this stuff around health and safety. It's drummed home to you. There's a need for it. 8 people died in construction for health and safety reasons in 2022, but 507 people took their own lives. That's a bigger issue, and we're not talking about it. So yes, through personal experience this year, it was always on my radar anyway, but it's made a huge impact in my life, and it's something that if nobody else is willing to do anything about it, as always, Kyle, I shall put myself in the fire.
Well, again, inspirational stuff, and obviously terrible tragedy. So, sorry for the loss that you and your son have had. But I think again, it's what's really poignant is the fact you've used that adversity as actually the reason why you're doing what you're doing at the end of the year. So very, very inspirational stuff, and thank you for sharing. Final question, Michaela. I could chat to you for hours, to be fair, but I know you've got things to do, place to be, people to see, fingers in pies. If there's people listening to this that are either thinking about getting into sales, or maybe they're in sales and having a tough time of it, because a lot of people get in sales and think, oh, is this really for me? How would you sell sales as a career to them?
What if they're already in it and struggling?
Yeah, or someone looking to get into it for the first time. Why should people work in
Kyle,
sales?
I'm going to give you a tip, right? Can I tell you my goals thing? And I know we're not.
Go for it,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, this is like the most important thing that I do in my life. Genuinely now, you need to start doing it if you don't already. So I always do it at the end of the year in the Christmas holidays, because it's just a perfect time to do it. Like when you say, I'm going to lose a stone next year, that period of time, I sit down and I write all of my goals for the next 12 months. And so I'll go through business by business. I go through my personal life. It's always to lose a stone. It's yet to happen. Or I lose it and then put it straight back on in summer when I just start drinking loads of Aperol. So I write down all of my personal goals, my family goals. So that might be like going on X amount of holidays. Within the businesses, like I want to take on 12 members of staff or whatever that, not that many, but like whatever that is. And then I will then build out a plan of how I'm going to do both of those. So it's basically like a refresh of everything. So in the business, I want to take on a new marketing person, 3 new sales reps, and X, Y, and Z. I want to turn over so much. So what does that look like? Month by month, I'm going to have to take on, so basically writing a new business plan every year. We're going to have to take on somebody here. We're going to have to turn over this amount. Our break even is going to be this. Write out that plan for the next 12 months. And month by month, understand what I'm going to do to achieve it. If I'm going to lose a stone by the end of the year, what does that look like month by month? If I'm going to take my children to Florida in July, how much money is that going to cost me? How much am I going to have to, what am I going to have to do? What do I need to get paid from work to be able to do that? And I literally go into the micro detail, set the goals, work it back. How am I going to achieve these goals? And it's really important to not just set a goal, but to work it backwards and be like, right, what am I doing month by month, week by week, however long, to achieve these things? And then every 2 months, I go in, it's on my notes on my phone, I'll go in and I'm like, where am I up to? I'm behind with this, I'm in front with that. What's impacting it? How can I change it? and I check on my goals. And then at the end of each year, I review it, and we'll surpass it or we've not quite hit it. What are the reasons for that? When I'm setting my goals for the next year, we can bear that in mind. So I've done this since I started my own business 14 years ago. It's the most important thing that I've ever done because it keeps me on track. During the pandemic, I got really depressed, not like bad depressed, but I mean, I was upset, shall I say, that everything went to shit. Sorry, another swear word, but it really did. Life got turned upside down. Our marketing agency went to 5% turnover, and that's where I basically take most of my money from. My wage comes from that. So I was getting paid zero, didn't add it, no money. And I am a spender, Kyle. So I didn't have a huge amount of savings, and we swiftly went through that. And at the end of the day, I had all these grand plans. That was the year where we was basically taking off, where we was going to make these moves, everything I'd learned from The Apprentice. My son was a bit older. We had all these grand ambitions, and I was so upset. And I got to the end of the year and I looked back at all of the goals that I had, and obviously there was nowhere near anything. And then I wrote down like what we had done, instead of like taking on whatever it was, 10 members of staff. I think it was going to be that year. We'd kept everybody in a job. We didn't have to get rid of anyone. And then our turnover was supposed to be whatever it was, and we was like, well, actually, we did still turn over this. And it was a tragic year, and it was really difficult and challenging. But when I sat down and did that, I was like, do you know what? I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud that there's lots of businesses around me, and it's heartbreaking, but people are losing their livelihoods and losing their businesses. And we've managed to navigate this, and everybody's still got a job. I've got lots of friends and family working for me as well, Matt, and everybody's still got a job. We're still in work, like we still can go and make something from it. So it's really important to do it for the pros and cons. And at the end of it, you take from it what you want to take from it. But for me, I've always took a positive from it. Either we're going to learn from it, or actually this year isn't as bad as what I thought. And if I didn't have all this written down, I would have carried on with the mentality of, oh, this is an absolute failure. So it's really important. Anybody who's struggling like in sales, I think when I say you've got to be laser focused, I really do mean it. Like your vision has to be money, and that money has to be attached to something that you want from your life. So a house, some shoes, a car, your children, whatever it is, and then work it back. It's so important to do that. And honestly, it just keeps you going, just keeps you focused. Like, right, I'm not it this month, I'm going to have to double down next month, or else I'm not going to get this thing that I really, really want. And then anybody wanting to get into sales, I would say do the same thing. What do you want from your life? Even if it's just a short-term 12-month goal, what is it that you want in the next 12 months? You can literally achieve anything. I am a firm believer in you can do anything that you want to do. There's no one person better than somebody else. It's just that person really understands what they're trying to do, and they've made a plan to get the thing what it is that they want to get. So for anybody who's like contemplating it, sales, it's uncapped commission. Well, most businesses will do uncapped commission, endless amounts of money. It's dependent on how hard you work, how focused you are. Absolutely get into it. It will change your life. It changed mine. I could have been doing anything. I could have been an RE teacher, stuck in a job with no time or financial freedom. And instead, I'm trying to take over the world, Kyle.
And what a way to end, Michaela. That was a great, champion for why people should go into sales. That brings us to the end today, Michaela. Massive thank you. A lot of stuff in there that I think people will find valuable. Really appreciate you joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Pleasure.